We're moving into most exciting part for me is the whole breeding side. It's session 5. We have 2 sections left. Just for your planning, we did. Some of you may have gotten it printed at 4, ending at 4. Some of you may have got it ending at 5. We're going to end at 4. Okay. So those of you who are thinking 5, you'll get a relief, and those of you who are thinking 4, you can keep that schedule. All right. Actually, what we did is I rewrote a bunch of the material because of what we're learning from people like Jennifer and a number of our heritage farmers, especially in North Carolina. And we were like, okay, in order to help you to be successful, we need to bring more content for you. And so the whole budgeting piece, the marketing side, I think that some of what we're going to go over there will be very helpful for you. So. But the blue section, before we launch into that, what are you thinking so far? What are you excited about? What are your concerns? What are your fears? What's kind of some things that you're feeling as you're sitting through and interacting with other farmers, listening to me, looking at the content? What's going through your lovely brains?
Somebody had asked a question earlier. You were talking about how do you prevent interbreeding.
I'm going to cover that in this section. Yep, great question. I'll give you the answer. All right? What else? What's been helpful or thoughts, clarification?
It's more of a question. I know that we're doing both turkeys and chickens here. I've always had it be easy to never rear turkeys and chickens on the same ground or near one another because of, was it black spot or black, what is it?
Blackhead.
Blackhead. Is that real, or is that one of those myths like turkeys drown themselves in the rain?
Well, I'm going to give it to you from my personal experience, okay? And that is that for 25 years prior to going into the commercial industry, I raised chickens and turkeys together. If you look pretty much pre-1950, chickens and turkeys were raised on farms together all over the place, all right? So I believe that if you have good genetic vigor, all right, like the chances of you actually carrying something to our bronze flock here, unless you had a very serious case of blackhead, it's pretty minimal, not because you don't have blackhead on your shoes, but because we have really good genetics, all right? And so there are definitely, like, chickens can tolerate blackhead, doesn't necessarily affect them, and turkeys cannot. Where Bub's Barred Rocks came from, Cynthia Glasgow's up in East Bend, and she wanted to raise turkeys. And I think she started with 70 poults and was down to 10 or 12 poults at the end, and we discovered blackhead. Whoops, excuse me. And so she just decided, see, blackhead in your soil pretty much never goes away. If you have blackhead in your soil, you can only do one of 2 things. Never raise a turkey again on your land, or put them up on elevated. Or you can treat. You can treat for blackhead, and Cynthia said, no, I'm just going to stick with chickens.
What are the symptoms of the blackhead? Does it come from the chickens?
No, not necessarily. It can be transmitted by chickens, and chickens can be carriers of it. Right. But blackhead, and I'm not a poultry veterinarian, so diseases, I still have lots and lots to learn of that. Now keep in mind that my short time in the industry is when I really had to study that. Other than that, I've had good genetics and could count on a couple of hands how many birds I've lost from illness, kind of thing. But blackhead is a disease that is primarily lives in earthworms. And in our part of the country, when blackhead is in an earthworm, it doesn't get cold enough, they just go down a little farther, and so blackhead is carried primarily through earthworms and never goes away. And it affects their muscles, their respiratory, and birds die fast. Yeah.
Is it a virus? What is it?
It is a virus. Yeah.
And it affects chickens also, right?
Yep.
Because I had a rooster who was just dead face down, but it was like he was really hoarse,
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, it's like he was hoarse sounding. But none of the other chickens were affected.
Yeah, I would say that probably wasn't blackhead. If you get blackhead, it'll spread Eventually, it'll just chip away at your turkey flock, and they'll all die from it eventually. All right, other questions? Where are these people's come? On their phones? Other questions?
If you do end up with your flock getting killed off by blackhead, I mean, you just need to not have turkeys. What do you do?
Well, like I said, 3 choices. Never raise turkeys again. Vaccinate day-old poults for blackhead, which you know, no more, can't do anything organic. You violate all that. Or thirdly is you raise them up off the ground in screen pens. Those are your 3 options.
Do you recommend Merrick's for chickens?
Vaccination? I don't.
Okay.
A lot of the hatcheries will vaccinate for Merrick's at day old. And let me tell you how they vaccinate for Merrick's. Basically, they give the chick the disease, and then they grow to be immune to that disease. And then
Are they carriers for life then?
Mhm. That's correct.
So do you vaccinate?
I don't. I'm vaccinated. I'm vaccinated and don't recommend vaccinating any of our birds, any of our flocks. Other questions? These are nice and random.
What's the minimum number of days you have in a flock?
I'm going to hit on that this next section. I'll answer that. All right, and if you have nothing else, let's move into it. All right, so the introduction to breeding standard bred poultry. Let me tell you, I put there that first blank is, I put it all in caps in my notes, urgency. Need for poultry breeders. There's an urgent need or urgency for poultry breeders. Let me tell you a little story to help bring this into perspective. Okay? Probably is 25 years ago, we were full across the United States of men that were called stringmen. There were men and women, but primarily, and stringmen were men or married couples. Stringmen were folks who took anywhere from 600 to 800 poultry, chickens, ducks, geese, and turkeys, from one fair to the next. Excuse me. So Mr. John Tomford, who was hi guys, how are you? Late in class. We haven't filled in any blanks yet, so you're good. All right, so John Tomford, he's probably in his 90s now. He was a stringman, and his dad was a stringman. And he would talk about how they would put 600 to 800 poultry on railroad cars. They would start at the Minnesota State Fair, show the birds. All 600 to 800 of them would be entered in a county or a state fair. They would load all those birds up, put them on a rail car, go to the next fair, exhibit the birds. Keep in mind, who feeds these birds when they're at the fair? Not you, the fair. All right? Plus, they pay you anywhere, back then, it was probably anywhere from $4 to $6 for a blue ribbon. So if you got 600 to 800 birds in this show string, you go from one fair to the next fair, they would start on a railroad car, showing those high volumes of birds, start in Minnesota, go to the Montana State Fair, and usually they would end about the 3rd or 4th week in September at the Los Angeles County Fair. And they would sell all these birds. Okay, and that's what a stringman would do. And he would make an enormous amount of money. And the way that a stringman survived is, John, what's your favorite breed so far?
Rhode Island White.
Okay, Rhode Island White. All right? The way a stringman would survive, because he never hatched chickens, he would go to the breeders. He would say, John, I want all of your Rhode Island Whites that you aren't going to use for breeding. I'll put them in my fair string. I'll be a stringman. I'll take all your black Australorps, and actually I'll take all your black Australorps too, and Aaron, I want all of your extra Delawares, and Bob, I want all your extra Bar Plymouth Rock. Those will all be what you wouldn't use for breeding, I'll use as a stringman to go fair, 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 fair. Okay? Stringmen are gone. And part of the reason stringmen are gone is because fairs don't pay as much money anymore. There aren't as many cages. You can't put them on a rail car. You got, and even as 20 years ago, they would stack these crates on pickup trucks and flatbeds and take them from one fair to the next. Okay, that happened at Winston-Salem, the Dixie Classic Fair. There used to be hundreds and hundreds, and even at the state fair here. But another reason these stringmen are gone is because we no longer have devoted breeders of standard bred poultry. They're gone. I get with, as a judge, we get out and get around the country, and I can tell you that, there's probably anywhere from, 10 to 15 very, very devoted breeders of black Australorps and buff Orpingtons. There are some birds, certain breeds that are in the standard, I can't even find them. There's probably breeders that are, somewhere down in South Carolina, somewhere out in the sticks that just are passionate about the breed and breeding, but we don't know where they're at. So we're in this huge, huge urgency of restoring breeders to get back into saying, I want to take the bronze or bronze turkey or the bourbon red turkey or the partridge Shannon Claret, and I want to get it back to where it once was. And let me tell you, in your notes I put backyard poultry flocks. When, I'm using the word when we can no longer ship those chicks, there are, as high quality birds is decreasing, the backyard poultry interest is increasing. And they just passed a law in the city of Philadelphia that you can have 3 chickens all the way on 12 stories of your apartment complex on your deck out back. And you go Billings, Montana, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they're fighting these ordinances. It took place in Raleigh, it happened in Asheville, where we got to fight so we can have 3 to 5 chickens in our backyard. And I'm telling you that when the hatcheries can no longer ship chicks, it's going to be really exciting for those who are saying, I want to be one of those breeders who is restoring some of these old breeds and bringing them back, so that when the backyarders in Asheville go, we can't ship them anymore, we can't get them through Tractor Supply, where do we go? We go to places like the Biltmore or to the local breeders, and where we're reestablishing these breeder flocks. And so it's pretty exciting for me, as my paradigm shift has been, wow, I've been judging these birds for 25 years, but most of the birds I judge are these exhibitors that are just buying the bird and getting them from somewhere and just trying to show them. And so the quality of the birds has drastically declined. So I am not ashamed to tell you that I am on a hunt to find people who say, I love the silver lace wyandottes, how do we establish and get the breed back to where it once was? Rhode Island whites and Rhode Island reds and Delawares and so forth and so on. So, and that's a critical part of preservation of the history of getting these birds back. Make sense? There's an urgency. There really is. So with that, let me move into the content here on breeding systems. First, number 1 is inbreeding. All right, and I'll give you a little definition here. It's the mating together of fowls which are related so that the resulting offspring have one or more ancestors that occur on both the sire side and the dam side of the pedigree. Okay? So, inbreeding, very specific inbreeding can be take one male and one female, cross them, and evaluate the progeny. Okay, let me give you the rest of them. Number 2, line breeding. A form of inbreeding that seeks to concentrate the genetic impact of a single excellent individual rather than several throughout a population. The goal is to create a group of birds as much like the excellent individual as possible. So you can see, actually, inbreeding and line breeding would be similar, and I'll explain that further in a minute. Number 3, line crossing. Bloodlines or strains created by different breeders that are crossed. Let me illustrate it this way. It's perfect. Okay, Jennifer, how long have you had Australorps?
30 years.
30 years she's had black Australorps. So now if she bred that line of Australorps and never went to an outside resource, that would be the From the Heart Farm line of black Australorps. Okay? Or you can call it the Jennifer Bencourt Black Australorps. Typically 5 years, the line becomes yours. Okay? So in 5 years, we can say that line of Partridge Chanticleers comes from a great breeding program at Western Piedmont Community College. 5 years. Okay?